Hi, everybody. I'm here with Laurie Golden, and we are talking recruiter enablement. Laurie, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. Give us an introduction to you.
Hi, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Lori Golden. I have been a talent acquisition leader for like 25 years. My sweet spot is scaling tech startups, usually somewhere between the seed and Series D or E. Usually, when the suits come in to button things up and ready the company for IPO, that's when I Mary Poppins my way off to the next thing and drop into build. I love building 0 to 1, 1 to 2, fail fast, iterate. I'm scrappy, I'm a renegade, and I love to talk about how to create new paradigms and shifts for doing things better.
Okay, wonderful. So there's plenty of startup, scale-up companies in the USA that need people like you, right? And you're in Las Vegas. I think there's quite a good tech scene in the city, is there?
Less so in New York. I mean in Vegas. Sorry, I'm a New Yorker, New York, New Jersey girl. So that's where I kind of built my startup career is on the East Coast in New York, Silicon Alley, not Valley. But Vegas is, it's a little weaker. It would like to have a more robust tech, ecosystem here, which I will find my way to insert myself into. But really, it's more gaming is kind of the
Yeah,
startup, the innovation is all around gaming, which
yeah,
makes good sense since our economy is fueled by gambling. So
yes, yes.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about recruiter enablement. You've seen this from almost every angle, I think. So, like,
Oh yeah.
what's your summary on what's it all about? Why is it important? Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, for one, I mean, the entire talent acquisition function and the people function itself seems to be an afterthought when it comes to tools, resources, strategies, and all of that, which is insane to me, being the biggest area of opportunity for a company to differentiate themselves. Like the only actual real competitive advantage you have is your team of people and the culture you've created, right? Because anything can be replicated, any technology, product, or service can be replicated, maybe not legally, but it still can be replicated. Your only actual unique thumbprint is your team. It's also, in most all companies, the largest spend line item.
Mm.
So, with those two facts, why is this not an area that you drive the most amount of strategic resources, tools, enablement? And for me, I think that the real crux of it all, the real key to enablement is empowerment. I think there's a lack of empowerment in people, in most people functions. Now, caveat, obviously, in startups, things are a little different, right? Cultures are a little different. They're built around, every function mattering, and especially the people function, because the earliest key players in a startup really do build the entire foundation of whether or not that company will successfully scale or not. So it's like the most critical thing in a startup isn't the MVP and the value prop and all these things. It's the people. It's the original team, right? Um, and what startups do really well is there's this element of trust and transparency that is incredibly difficult to scale. I'm not saying it's easy, right? Scaling trust and transparency. When you get to the point where leadership is like multi steps from every new hire, it becomes difficult to scale trust and transparency, but it is possible. And it is what is needed, right? So, trust and transparency at the core builds the essence of empowerment, people being empowered within the function they're working. And what does that look like in recruiting? Well, usually in many instances in most companies, recruiters are thrown into a role, into a seat, right? Given tools that they had no say in using. They have no, like they don't get to say, hey, I don't think this is the right ATS, or this doesn't really serve the target talent that we're seeking to attract. There isn't very little of that, but rather here, this is what you get to use, make the best of it. And off they go. So we miss that whole part of empowerment, which again is fed by a trusting and transparent environment, which I agree is tough to scale. But if you have talent acquisition leaders and people team leaders who fundamentally understand how critically important that trust and transparency are, right? The more your recruiters know and the better able they are to represent your company, good, bad, and ugly. Because let's get real, every company has all three. And it's really important to be able to spin it in such a way that people can still see it as an attractive opportunity without feeling totally bamboozled on day one, right? It's an interesting balance. But the trust and the transparency piece are threaded into everything a successful talent function does. And it's what's missing in most companies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, do you in the 25 years or whatever it is that you've been in this area, like,
Yeah.
have you seen that founders are becoming more aware that this is like the most important thing within their business, or has there not really been a lot of change in that regard?
So we saw well, again, my perspective is very much, I'm a little bit, what's the word? I'm in a bubble of startups and I'm like
Yeah,
in the most progressive environments with theoretically the most progressive minded leaders. So
yeah,
sure, I've seen some of that. I've seen I've seen a shift towards caring more, or at least if let's take out the word caring, of prioritizing a focus on candidate experience, on kind of employer brand. These are some of the indicator DEI. B. Those are the indicators. Those are like the indicators that a company wants to or has a hankering to try to be more progressive, be more people first culture, all of that. Although I think they miss the mark because they think it's about programs and it's about philosophy. It's about that underlying trust and transparency either is or isn't. And it's a difficult conversation to talk about how to scale those things because how do you measure that? How do you measure the trust and transparency in an organization? If I could figure that out, I think I'd be able to probably retire soon because I think that that's one of the toughest conversations I've had to have over the course of a lot of years. And it's not objective, right? It's like that secret sauce, that energy, the chi. I call it company or corporate chi. It's like every company has an energy
yeah,
cycle or an energy
yeah.
container. And we're not really well versed as leaders at really picking that apart and analyzing it. So we over focus on what we can analyze and we
That's right.
miss the things that are the most important, the enablers of what we desire, the thing that fosters the outcomes we desire. We focus on the outcomes and not on how do you foster that environment? And it's a miss.
Yeah, I think that's maybe even more prevalent in like tech startups and tech scale-ups because the founders have such a large amount of influence in what happens, and they're often engineers, and they
Right,
often like the first people who join the business are often engineers. I mean, like back in the early days of Facebook, every like pretty much every senior leader from the CFO to the chief marketing officer was an engineer by background. And
right,
so they're very, very analytical and they want to measure everything or not do it. Does
right.
that mean that would you agree with my point?
I think somewhat. I think that if you have smart people, like high IQ, not just EQ, but in
Yeah.
people leader functions, then you get the respect to do some of that, like testing new things, failing fast. I don't think the analytical engineer founder mindset is going to give a lot of opportunity to the average people leader to you know, be innovative and disruptive because that's not really their get down. But some of us actually that is. Like that's why I coined myself the Mary Poppins of tech disruptive startups because exactly where I'm best leveraged. It's exactly where I can add the most amount of value, is partnering with brilliant engineering analytical minds, and like, hey, I don't understand anything about that algorithm you just created, yay you, but guess what, I see people the way you see that algo, and let's partner to create the best possible scenario.
Let's take it down to a tactical level for the
Sure.
final thing that I want to touch on. Like, I'm a recruiter in a team, like you're either my manager or you're raising the leadership or something like
Yeah.
that. Like, how am I going to, what are the tactical things that you're going to make sure happen that mean that I feel empowered and I feel enabled?
Totally. Well, for one thing, again, a lot of this is philosophical. I'll try and get tactical, but it does start with like mindset and philosophy. So I don't have teams that look like pyramids. That's how most teams look, right?
Yep.
Leader on top, everyone underneath.
Yep.
My teams are circles. I believe the circle is the model for the best possible team scenario. I see leaders as like coaches of sports teams. Like, that's the best analogy I can make to what a leader should be, right?
Love that.
It's my job to enable and empower people. So that's the start of it, is I create a very balanced and equal playing field for the whole team, where that trust and transparency can be fostered. One thing I do with every team I've ever had is we do a team and individual SWOT analysis, and we do it in public. So like with each other. So like, I'm going to tell you about my strengths, and I'm going to share with you my weaknesses, so that as a team we can double down on everyone's strengths and support everyone with their weaknesses. That's, to me, the key to a dream team. Okay, once you have that foundationally in place, and you're not forcing people to do the things that they're not great at and don't like doing, and you have everybody working in their optimal kind of tasks, or doing what they're best at, then you can add tools, processes, all kinds of resources to the mix, and actually be able to use them. So one of the things, there are a lot of really cool talent tech tools out there in the world tactically. Um, but most companies aren't using them well. If they use them at all, they're not using them well. Why? Because they haven't built this foundation of a trusting, transparent, open team where everybody is supporting each other, and it's like iron sharpens iron every single day. They actually can create an environment where everyone is kind of like in the flow, in the zone, whatever you call it if you're an athlete, all the
Yep.
time, right? And then we as a team can make decisions around what's the right tool for us and how to use it and implement it. So, when I find the people on my team that are really analytical, really great process people, there has to be a balance of great sales, outgoing, charismatic communicators, and operational prowess and analytics and all of that to make a really great team. Okay, we can't all be one thing or the other thing, or we're going to lack. But I find my folks, and then those are the people that I put in charge of implementing new technology, not just me, right? As a leader, in most companies where I have been the IC and, in a team with a leader, it's like all that happens in a vacuum outside of our day to day. It's like, don't disrupt their calls, or they won't make as many calls, or don't disrupt their interview flow, or they won't have as many interviews. But I absolutely disagree. I think everybody should be involved in all of the moving parts, and the parts that they themselves are most aligned to create the best situation for all. So I have the people who are really great implementing folks. They do that. They like to put the documentation together. They like to put the guides together to enable the rest of the team. And then I find the people who are really good teacher, trainer, coach minded people, and I have them piggyback on the work that the analytical implementation folks put together. And then I have them work to help get us all up to speed. Again, it's leveraging people well. That's what leadership is all about. It's the least talked about aspect of leadership. Why? Not a clue.
Hmm. Many, many interesting points. I think that we're going to have to get you back and dive into some of these again at some point. But
It lights me up. If you can't tell, this is where my energy comes from, is talking about the things that I've such an interesting 360 perspective. I've been the recruiter, I've been in the agency world, I've been in-house in corporate, I've been in leadership on both sides, I've been a hiring manager, I've been a job seeker as recently as 2023 in this shitstorm market. So like my perspective is unique. And on top of that, I have absolutely zero problem being totally transparent. I'm very frank and blunt about, the way I see things. So
You've
hopefully that's useful for somebody.
Yeah, no, you've got the experience and you've earned the right to be blunt and frank. So, Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's been really great to talk
Likewise,
to you
Adam.
and to learn from you.
Totally. I look forward to doing more of it.